Hello everyone, welcome to MCM 220 Strategic Content Creation. I'm glad to have you in this class and I'm excited to get started with you this semester. So as the class title suggests, this class is all about creating content, but creating content with purpose. So in this semester, we're going to work with different types of content and different media platforms. And we're going to think not only about how to create effective content, but also why we create it, who we are creating it for, and what we want to achieve with that content. So before we get into the actual class content, I want you to spend a little time to just give you an overview of this class. So what we're going to learn in this class, how the class is structured, and what you can expect from the major assignments and activities in the semester. And the second part of today's class, we're going to move into our first topic, which is strategic writing. Okay, so let's begin with the quick overview of this class. Okay, so let's break down the class title and talk about these three words one by one. The first one is strategic. So what is strategic? We're going to create a lot of content in this class. You are going to write stories, you're going to work with photos, produce audio, and create all types of digital content and working with social media. But simply being able to create content is not enough. Strategic content creation means making intentional choices about what we create, who we create it for, why we create it, and where do we publish it. So we need to create right content. Different communication situations require different types of content. Sometimes we need a written story about something because it is the best way to communicate something in depth. And sometimes a photograph can tell the story in a more effective way. So one thing we need to practice in this class is choosing the appropriate format for the message we want to communicate. So that is about the right content. And also for the right audience. So we need to create content for the right audience because the same message may need to look very different depending on whether you are communicating with, let's say, college students like you guys, or maybe the parents. Are you communicating with the customers or community members, other stakeholders, or any other audiences? So one of the most important questions you should ask before creating anything is, who am I trying to reach? Okay, who is your target audience? That's a very important question to ask. And also with the right purpose. So are you trying to promote the organization, or are you trying to convince people to take some kind of actions? Before we start creating any type of content, we need to know what we want the content to accomplish, so you can have a purpose in your mind. And last but not least, the platform. Okay, so we need to think about where the content will appear. So the content that works well on the website may not work well on social media like Instagram. So in this semester, we're going to think not only about what we are communicating, but also where and how we are going to communicate it. All right, so the next question is, what is content? The content is basically any material we create to communicate a message to an audience. So it could take different formats. The written content, so the website copy or news release or any feature stories, any other forms of professional writing. Well, basically, writing is actually going to be the very foundation of what we learn in this class. And even when we're working with audio or social media, group writing is usually still behind the final product. So we're going to do a lot of writing in this class. The content can also be visual, so photographs, graphics, or any other forms of visual storytelling is important in this class. Because sometimes an image can communicate something much more quickly or maybe more powerful than some other, than some other types of materials. So we're also going to think about how visuals contribute to the story we're trying to tell. The audio includes interviews, podcasts, or audio stories. So the audio can give us something that the written content cannot always provide. So that means we can actually hear somebody's voice, okay, the actual person's voice. And it usually gives us some additional clue about different things. So the audio content is going to be important. And then of course we have social media content. This phrase you see here, the platform specific. This is important. We shouldn't just simply create one piece of content and copy and paste it everywhere to all the platforms. The effective content is usually adapted to the expectations and conversations of the platform where it appears. So platform-specific content and content repurposing is something we'll be paying attention to in this class. Multimedia. So multimedia content basically means we're going to bring several of these forms together into one communication package. So, for example, I may ask you to create a story on a website that includes a written article, a photo gallery, a sidebar of the audio interview, and social media content that helps to promote the story. So, you do not just think about each format separately, you should think about how they can work together to tell a coherent story. Okay, let's talk about creation, what we are going to create in this class. Well, throughout the semester, you are going to create content for a variety of real-world communication context. Websites, we're going to create content designed for websites for sure, and we're also going to work with social media content. The public relations and promotion campaigns is basically the organizations constantly need to communicate with their audience, and they may need to announce something, promote an event, maybe introduce a new product or service. Maybe they need to tell the organization's background stories or encourage people to take some kind of actions. And that's what do we mean by the public relations and promotion campaigns. We are going to practice creating content that serves all these types of strategic goals for the organizations. We have podcast and audio, so you are going to practice interviewing people and working with recorded sound in this class. And last but not least, multimedia storytelling, which is by the end of the semester, we are going to bring these different skills all together through the multimedia storytelling, and you are going to create a multimedia business story, a business promotion campaign, basically a big package that includes everything. Something I wanted to briefly talk about here is the idea of content repurposing. So content repurposing basically means taking the same core message or the material and adapting it into different forms for the different platforms and audience, something I've mentioned before. We are going to talk about that, and we're going to practice that later this semester. But I just wanted to give you a head up. This is something we'll be doing in the class. Okay, Let me give you a quick example. Say you have a local nonprofit organization which is launching a fundraising campaign. The organization has a goal for this campaign, which is to raise money and to support for its cause. But it can create different types of content to accomplish that goal. So on the website, it might tell a full story explaining the problem and the people the organization serves and why the campaign is important, why you should care about this campaign. So tell the entire story on its website. And then it also may send out news release to the local media, to local news organizations in hopes of getting some kind of media coverage, get some kind of attention. And then on the social media, for example, Instagram, it might use photos, graphics, and short captions to reach its followers visually. It could also produce a podcast or maybe recorded interview featuring someone personally affected by the issue, or maybe allow people to, tell their stories in their own voices. And last but not least, it can create promotional materials specifically designed to encourage people to donate. For example, the posters, the promotional ads, things like that. So as you can see, the same organizational goal, but you need to create different content, and also this content need to be designed specifically for different platforms. All right, let's talk about what skills will you build in this class. By the end of the semester, I want you to be able to do 5 things: write, adapt, create, refine, and integrate. So, first and probably the most important thing in this class is you need to be able to write well. Writing is really the foundation of this class, and it's not just about good writing. We're talking about professional writing in this class, which means it needs to be clear, accurate, and audience-centered. The second skill is to adapt. So just like the fundraising example I had before, the core organizational goal might stay the same, but the content changes depending on the audience, the purpose, and the platform. The third one is to create. Please remember, this is a very hands-on class. You're actually going to create stuff in this class, okay? So the creation, that means you're going to work with the written content, visuals, audio, social media, different types of platforms, and eventually the multimedia. Number 4 is to refine. So that is another important skill, to refine your work, because professional content creation is not a one and done process, okay? So you're going to create something for sure, but also you need to review it, revise it, you need to get some feedback, you need to go back and revisit your stuff and edit it again and again, and to make it better. So that is the refine. And last but not least, integrate. So finally, you're going to learn how to integrate different forms of content. And this is actually where the class is heading by the end of the semester. You are going to combine written and audio, the photos, several social media posts. They are all work together as a coherent communication package. That is what you are going to do by the end of the semester. That is your final assignment. Please remember, each piece should contribute something different, okay? So they should complement each other, and together they should serve the same larger communication goal. Okay, so now you have a general idea about what we'll be learning in this semester. Let me briefly explain how the class is structured. The major component of this class is the lectures. So each week we are going to focus on a particular topic in strategic content creation. During these lectures, I'm going to introduce the key concepts, the theories, and the skills that you need to understand and also apply in your assignments. And there are going to be some in-class assignments over the semester. Most of the weeks you are going to have assignments that can be done individually, or some kind of the assignments require some kind of collaborations between you guys. But these are the hands-on activities that help you to practice these skills and also prepare you for the major stories. Overall, you have 3 major assignments over the semester. So each assignment designed to help you develop professional content creation skills across multiple formats and platforms. You have the podcast package, in which you are going to conduct an interview and create a content package consisting for the podcast episode and also an article and some social media content. The second one is the PR content package. You are going to develop a media relations package that includes a news release, some supporting materials, the visual component, and also the promotional elements. And last but not least, you are going to have the multimedia business promotion package as your final assignment for the semester. So you are going to promote a local business or the organization to by creating a comprehensive promotional package that integrates written, visual, audio, and social media content. And by the way, you can find all this information in the syllabus, which is available on Brightspace. I highly encourage you to just take some time, sit down, and read the syllabus carefully because it has all the information you need to know about this class. Okay, so here is the grade allocation. We are going to have 10 in-class assignments, and each assignment is worth of 20 points, so together that's 200 points. The 3 major stories, the 3 major packages. Podcast package is 100, PR content package is another 100. The final one is the big one, the multimedia business promotion package. It is worth of 200 points, and we also have 100 points allocated for the attention. So altogether, you have 700 points possible for this class. And here is the grading scale we'll be using for this class. Please remember, it is your responsibility to track your grades. So if you have any questions about grades, please come and talk to me. This is the grading scale. As you can see, we use this round up, round down decimal stuff in this class. So if the decimal of your grade is 0.5 or higher, it will be rounded up to the next whole number. If the decimal of your grade is less than 0.5, it will be rounded down. Okay, so as I said before, many of our in-class assignments will involve working with a partner or in a small group. So I wanted to spend some time to talk a little bit about the peer collaboration because it's going to be a regular part of this class. Over the semester, you are going to have many opportunities to work with your classmates, and many of these activities are designed to prepare you for the major assignments. Working with someone else gives you a chance to practice the new skills together. For example, when we practicing, interview another person, you can work in pairs, and one person can be the interviewer and the other person can be the interviewee, and then you can take the turn to do the interview, to practice the interview. So one thing I want you to know in advance is that I'm going to randomly assign partners or groups. Okay, so you won't necessarily work with the same person every time over the semester, and that is intentional because it is very easy to sit next to the same person every time and work with the same friend every week. But in a professional environment, okay, in the professional setting, you usually do not get the chance to work with the same person every time. You need to be able to communicate and collaborate with different people, to work with different personalities, to adapt yourself to different working styles. So I wanted you to have that in your mind, and always remember to be a good partner, to contribute, to communicate, and to support each other. That's very important in this class. Well, another thing I want to emphasize from the very beginning of this class is that please remember this is a very hands on class. And when I say hands on, I don't just mean that we are going to do some activities during the class. A lot of the work you are going to do in this class will actually require you to go beyond the classroom, okay, to interact with people in real world. So, for example, the audio assignment you're going to have, later this semester, I'm going to ask you to interview people outside of the class. Sometimes it might be someone you already know, and sometimes it could be a person that you've never talked with before. You are going to sit down with that person and you are going to start the conversation, prepare the questions, you are going to lead the conversation. Also, you need to record audio and gather some other multimedia materials from that person. Later this semester, you are also going to have the opportunities to reach out to a local business or local organization, and you'll be creating content for a real business or organization rather than simply inventing some, hypothetical one. So, because of that, you should expect to do, I would say, substantial light work outside of the class. I'm going to give you time, mostly I would say Fridays, to work on your stuff individually. So you need to be prepared to take initiative, to meet new people, to step outside of your comfort zone. And I know some of these things can be challenging. It may feel like a little bit intimidating at first, but please don't worry about that. We're going to talk about how to contact sources, how to prepare for the interviews, how to communicate professionally, and how to handle these situations. And we're also going to practice for that. So please have that in your mind, and we're going to have the actual learning started. Okay, so now we have talked about what this class is really about and what you can expect throughout the semester. Let's get into our first real topic today, which is strategic writing. And we're starting with writing for a reason. Although this class will eventually involve photos, audio, social media, just multimedia in general, writing is the foundation of almost everything we are going to do. But the kind of writing we are going to focus on this class is a little bit different from the writing you may be, used to doing in other classes or the writing you have in your mind. We are going to focus specifically on something called strategic writing. Let me explain. So, what is strategic writing? Strategic writing is purposeful, goal oriented communication designed to help an organization achieve its objectives. So, the purpose of strategic writing should connect to a specific organizational goal. let's go back to the nonprofit fundraising example we've talked before. The nonprofit have an, let's say, organizational goal, for example, like raising $50,000 for a new community program. So that is the overall organizational goal. And what types of strategic writing you can create to help accomplish that goal? You might write an Instagram post, and the purpose of that particular post might be to increase awareness of this campaign. You could probably also write an email to all the previous donors and to persuade them to donate again. You could also write a news release that is designed to generate some kind of local media coverage to attract some public attention. So, as you can see, each individual piece of communication has its particular purpose, but those purposes can be connected back to the organizational larger goal. So that is strategic writing. It is purposeful and also goal oriented. Strategic writing is not just good writing. I mean, of course, strategic writing should be good writing. It should be clear, it should be accurate, it should be well organized. But that's not enough. You can have a beautifully written piece of content but completely fails to accomplish what the organization wants to accomplish. So, strategic writing should be good writing for sure, but simply good writing is not enough. We also need to make the writing strategic. Okay, what makes writing strategic? Well, the key idea here is strategy. A strategy is essentially a set of planned actions designed to achieve a goal, and that word planned is important. The strategic writing needs to have a purpose. Okay, so that is the very first question you want to ask. Why are we communicating in the first place? If we don't know what we are trying to accomplish, it is going to be very difficult to make good decisions about anything else. So, purpose always comes first. And then, once you know the purpose, you need to think about the audience. Who exactly are we trying to reach? Who are you talking with? So, imagine a college wants to increase enrollment. So, it might communicate with prospective students, the parents, high school counselors, or maybe transfer students. The larger organization goal may be the same, but we probably wouldn't communicate with all four groups in exactly same way. So you may talk to students, but also, imagine you are talking with a student and imagine you are talking with a parent. The strategy might be different, and the content might also be different as well. So think about your audience. Then we need to decide on the message. And I like to think about message in terms of four possible outcomes. What do we want our audience to know, to think, to feel, or to do? So often, a communication may try to accomplish more than just one of these, but, having these in your mind is important because we still need to be clear about the central message we want our audience to take away. The next question is, how should we communicate it? Okay, so that is about the content, the format. Should this be a written story? Are we thinking about a photo, maybe infographic, or some kind of audio interview, a podcast? Are we creating a short video? Maybe a combination of several formats. That's one of the options, right? So the important point here is we shouldn't choose the format first just because we like it. Oh, I like podcast, so I'm choosing the podcast. Not like that, okay? We choose the format because it is appropriate for the audience and for the communication goal. The next one, which is also the last one, It's about the channel. Okay, finally, we need to decide on the channel we'll be using. So, where should this message appear? If the people you're trying to reach are not using a particular platform, then creating the great content for that platform isn't going to accomplish very much. So think about the target audience once again. If you're trying to reach, let's say, the boomers, okay, you probably wouldn't use TikTok, but you are going to use Facebook to reach them. So think about your audience and try to figure out the best channel to reach them. So purpose, audience, message, content format, and channel, these are the 5 things you need to consider. These are the decisions you need to make, and all of these makes your writing strategic. Well, I would like to use some time to talk about the audience because audience is at the center of strategic communication. Think about a business, okay? A business needs customers because customers purchase its products and service. The organization, let's say nonprofit organization, may depend heavily on donors for the financial contributions. Organizations also depend on their employees for their work, for their knowledge and engagement. They may also depend on the news media for coverage and public visibility, and they also operate within the larger communities and publics whose trust and support can also be extremely important for the organization. And all the things I mentioned before, all the people, all the groups of people I mentioned before, they are all the audience. Okay, so when you create content, you should have this audience in your mind. And it's not just about getting something from the audience. If you look at this list, it would be very easy to think about communication in a very transactional way. Just getting something from the audience. I just need to convince them to do something. But strategic communication is not simply about figuring out what do we want from these people and then creating message to get it from them. Instead, we need to think about the relationship between an organization and its audience. And relationships are not one-way thing, okay? Relationship depends on the two-way communication. If we really want communication to be the audience-centered communication, we cannot just ask what do we want from the audience. We also need to think about what does the audience need from us, okay? What we can provide to our audience. Communication is one of the primary ways organizations build and maintain these relationships. So communication is the core here. And please remember, strategic writing is not only about sending messages, it is also about building relationships. And yes, every strategic message has a purpose, and yes, organizations have goals, but effective strategic communication takes a longer view, or I would say thinking a larger picture, okay? So the question is not just about how can this message help us achieve our goal? It's also about how does this communication affect our relationship with this audience? Okay, so as you can see from the images here, strategic writing can take many different forms. It might be advertising copy designed to attract attention and convince someone to consider a product or service. It may also be social media posts designed to engage followers, to promote some kind of event, or build awareness of a particular brand. It could also be the content on the organization's own website, explaining who we are, what we are doing, and why someone should work with us. It could be news release or press release, written to provide the journalists and media workers with information and potentially generate some media coverage. It could also be the blog post that provides some useful information while also helping the organization establish expertise and build relationships with its audience. So, as you can see, the form changes, but strategic thinking behind the content remains. And you're also going to notice something else. In today's media environment, these forms rarely involve words alone. For example, the website combines the written content with visual design and multimedia. And also, that's the one of the reasons this class isn't just about the writing class. Okay, we're just not calling us the strategic writing. We're saying like strategic content creation. Okay, let's talk about the strategic writing process. So, strategic writing is a process, and this is probably the most important things to understand at the beginning, because we sometimes think of writing as simply just sitting down at a computer and starting to just type. But in the professional communication, the actual writing is only one part of the process. Okay, so there is work that happens before we write, and work that happens after we write, and even the work that happens after the content has been published. So the entire thing is a process, not just one step. In fact, we can divide the whole process into 4 phases: plan, create, refine, and deliver. The first stage is planning. That means before we start writing, we need to understand the communication situation. And once we have a plan, we move into creation, and this is the second stage, and this is also the stage where you really think of when we hear the word writing. And after we have a draft, we refine it. That means revising the content, editing the content carefully, getting feedback from the supervisors or just some appropriate persons, and sometimes seeking approval from other people within the organization. And finally, we deliver the content, and that means distributing or publishing it through the appropriate channel, and eventually we're going to evaluate the effects of the message. Well, within these 4 stages, there are actually 9 specific steps, and I'm going to walk you through these 9 steps next. Okay, so the first stage is planning, and planning involves 3 specific steps: research, brainstorming, and outlining or outlining. Step 1 is research. The idea here is you do not just start creating content until you really understand the situation you are communicating in. There are several things we need to understand before we started to write. The first one is, what is our purpose? Okay, define the purpose. What is the organization trying to accomplish with the message? And secondly, who is our audience? What do they already know about ourselves, and what do they care about? What might motivate them? So understand your audience is the second. And then we need to understand the media environment. Where does this audience get information? The boomers probably going to use the traditional media, or perhaps using they're on Facebook. And if you are trying to reach out to the teens, you are going to use TikTok, right? So what kind of content work on those platforms? and what are other organizations communicating about this issue. All of these, okay, all the things I just listed, they are the research, and these research help us to make better decisions about what communication and what to communicate and how we communicate it. That is the first step. Okay, do your research. And the second step is brainstorming. Generate and develop creative ideas for communicating the strategic message effectively. At this point, we are asking what are the different ways we could communicate this message. Are we going to tell a story? If we are going to tell a story, then what angle might connect with the audience? Are we trying to feature a person that would, benefit from the organization, or are we trying to, maybe we could use photo series, maybe we could create a short video and distribute the video to the social media, or maybe we can just create social media campaign. Maybe we can have an interview with experts. So this is the creative part, okay? The planning, the creative part of the planning process, I would say. So just have your ideas out. That's the second step. The third step is organizing/outlining. So at this step, we are deciding what information actually needs to be included and in what order. Okay, so not everything we just brainstormed need to appear in the final message. We could have 100 ideas, but eventually we're just going to do 5. Okay, so we have to do some decisions. We have to select the most relevant information and arrange it in a way that makes sense for our audience. So do your research, brainstorm some ideas, and select and organize your ideas. This is what we do in the planning stage. Okay, once we have done the planning, we are ready to move into the second phase, which is to create. And this phase has just one step: writing your first draft. When you are writing the first draft, your primary goal is to get the ideas and meaning right. Okay, so that's your only goal here. You are taking the ideas that were in your head or in your outline and putting them into the actual sentences and paragraphs, and that's the only thing you need to do at this stage. Okay, one of the biggest mistakes people always make at this stage is trying to make every sentence perfect as they write it. You write one sentence and then you immediately go back and change your word, or sometimes you are going to rewrite the sentence at this point. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's very wrong. Imagine you write a sentence and then you immediately rewrite it, and then you spend 5 minutes thinking about whether one word sounds better than the other, and after 20 minutes you just write one paragraph. That whole process can be extremely time consuming, and you're going to feel very, very frustrated if you're writing very, very slow. That's why I wanted you to remember this sentence. Do not edit while you are trying to create. Okay? Do not edit while you are trying to write. Writing and editing are two different things. They require a complete different ways of thinking. When you are creating, you just want to keep your ideas moving. If you constantly just stop and evaluate every single word and every single sentence, you can interrupt that process. Okay, your ideas just stop flowing. So your first draft does not have to be perfect. Maybe a sentence sounds very awkward, and maybe you are using a totally different wrong word, and maybe there's a better word but you cannot think of it right now. Maybe the paragraph needs to be reorganized. It's all fine. Just keep going, and always remember you can fix that later. Your point here, your priority here is to get your ideas out. Okay, so that's the only thing you need to do at this point. All right. Once we have a first draft, we move into phase 3, which is refining. Please remember in the previous stage, I told you not to worry about making every word perfect. Well, now it is the time. Okay, so this is where we start making things better. Refining involves 3 different steps: revising, editing, and seeking approval. The first one is revising. Revising means stepping back from the draft and asking whether the content actually works. And importantly, we wanted to look at it from the audience perspective, not just from our own perspective. So ask yourself, if I were the audience, would I understand this paragraph? Is the most important information clear in my message? Does this give me the reason to care about the service? So revising is important. It can involve fairly substantial changes because it's not just about fixing mistakes. It is sometimes involve some rethinking. Once we are satisfied with the overall content, we move into editing. And I would like to think about editing at 2 levels. At the marker level, we are still looking at the big picture. So does the content fit our purpose, or are we using the right format or style for the platform? That is the marker level. So thinking about the overall strategic effectiveness. And at the macro level, we are looking closely at individual sentences and words. So thinking about all the grammar, the spelling, the punctuation, the word choice, the sentence structure, the consistency of the writing. So these are all the things we need to edit at this point. And we also need to check in, the names, the dates, numbers, maybe the hyperlinks, the quotations, and some other factual details. And these may seem like small things, but in the professional communication, small errors can damage the credibility. So we need to pay attention to every single detail. I would like to describe revising as rethink your entire content, and editing is more like polishing your content at this point. And step 7, this is something that you may not associate with in your writing assignment in schools, which is seeking approval. In fact, I would say in the professional strategic communication, you're not writing only for yourself, and you do not just write by yourself alone. You are writing on behalf of an organization, and that means other people may also need to get involved. Okay, they may also need to review the content before your content goes public. And who reviews your content really depends on what you are creating. So it could be your supervisor, it might be your client if you are working for the agency. It might be someone whose expertise is represented in the content. For some sensitive material, it could even involve the legal review, having your content to be reviewed by an attorney or legal representation. So your writing will sometimes be changed by other people. This may not happen in the school, but be prepared if you are doing strategic writing jobs in the future. Okay, so the final stage is deliver, and this final stage includes 2 steps: distributing the content and evaluating what happened. So first, we need to get the content to the people we're trying to reach, so distribute it. And please notice that distribution is also a strategic decision. We've talked about this before. Choose I would say, appropriate platform. Okay, so we need to ask where is our target audience most likely to encounter this message. Different audiences use different media and different platforms, and the good content delivered through the wrong channel may never reach the people it was created for. You created a good message for teenagers and you somehow send it out on Facebook, where teenagers almost disappear on Facebook. I don't know. So choosing the right channel goes back to something we've been thinking about from the very beginning. Know your audience. Okay, really know your audience and know their media using habit. The very last step is evaluation. So distribution is not the end of the process. Our definition of strategic writing, if you still remember, is that the communication designed to help an organization to achieve a goal. So once the content has been distributed, we also need to come back to the original goal and ask, did our message work? Okay, so the answer depends on what we are trying to accomplish. So if our goal is to raise the awareness of the campaign, maybe we can just look at how many people have saw the content, so the impression of your social media post. That's how we evaluate the effectiveness of your content. If you're sending out a press release, maybe we want you to look at whether it is resulted in the media coverage, and if it does, then how many news organizations or news agencies have reported that. Okay, so we evaluate success based on the purpose we established at the beginning. So the very last step is also very important, and we cannot just omit it. Well, before concluding today's lecture, I'd like to briefly talk about the career activities of strategic writing. Strategic writing is a skill set used across many different communication careers. And one common setting is corporations and large businesses. A company may have its own marketing or communication department where the employees create content specifically for that organization. So you might work in marketing or public relations, advertising or social media, or any type of internal communication. And this is something we call, the in-house work. You work inside of the organization you are communicating for, and your work is constantly about thinking different audiences, the customers, the employees, the investors, the media, and the broader communities that your organization is operating within, and you are creating content for them. Okay, that's your job. And another possibility is working for an agency, the advertising agency, for example, or the PR agency, for example. So the major differences is that instead of communicating for just one particular organization, the organization you are working for, if you are working in an agency, then you usually work with multiple clients. Okay, so you're gonna have multiple clients, and that means you need to be particularly good at, I'd say, adapting. Okay, adapting. So think about different clients, different audiences, different voices, and different goals. You're going to have some flexibility, but at the same time, your responsibility is also going to be I would say a lot. Well, another possibility is working for the government agencies. The government agencies need people who can communicate policies, their programs, emergencies, and other public information clearly. So you might see the job titles like the PIOs, which represents for the Public Information Officer. So that's basically the communication people inside of the government. And the purpose here may be somewhat different from commercial marketing, but the thinking, okay, the strategic thinking behind communication remains the same. So the same strategic questions still apply to these positions. Nonprofits and trade associations also, well, I would say they also rely heavily on strategic communication. They may use communication to raise money, to advocate for a particular cause or an issue, maybe promote certain programs, or build relationships with their communities. So yes, they rely on strategic communicators as well. And finally, some communication professionals work independently, and I'd say it's going to be a trend, or there is a trend already about having communication professionals work independently, and they may be the consultant, and they may be freelancers. They could operate their own small communication business with the social media today. I mean, more and more people are trying to seek that types of flexibility and profit as well. They provide specialized service to different clients, and yeah, I'd say it's a good career choice as well. All right, that's everything we are going to cover for week one. We didn't get into a lot of specific writing skills this week. Instead, the main goal was to set the foundation for this class. I wanted to clarify what we mean by strategic content creation, highlight some of the key ideas that will guide us throughout the semester, and most importantly, I wanted to help you begin to develop a strategic mindset. As we discussed, strategic writing is not just about writing well, it's about thinking about why you are creating something and who you are trying to reach, what do you want to accomplish throughout this writing. And that way of thinking will continue to be important throughout this class, regardless of what type of content we're trying to work on. Starting from next week, we are going to get much more specific and practical. We'll begin with the fundamentals of media writing, the word choices and how do you write a sentence, how do you write paragraphs, things like that. And from there, we're going to start working on specific writing techniques. You are also beginning to have some exercise and some assignments where you can actually apply what we discuss in the lectures. So please make sure you stay on track with the lecture videos and the course materials each week, especially when we're working asynchronously at this time. And if you have any questions about the class, the material, or the assignments, please feel free to email me. Oh, by the way, we do not have assignment this week. All right. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope everything goes well at the beginning of the semester, and I will see you next lecture.